professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome to today's Entrepreneur on this Monday night. My name is Dan Delmar, along with my co-host Josh Miller from Fuller Landau. Josh, how are you?
I'm great, Dan. Thank you.
And this evening on the program, this is, of course, a program every Monday night at 7 p.m. about great entrepreneurs here in the city. And tonight we have another one. Please welcome to the program Normand Hébert Jr. of the Groupe Park Avenue. Normand, welcome.
Good evening.
And Dan, tonight, really interesting show. First of all, family business. It's really all about the family business. Normand is second generation. It's about cars, which everybody has a fondness for their first car, their second car, their last car, their current car.
All kinds of cars. Very expensive cars, moderately priced cars. You sell them all, Normand.
At a cocktail party, that's usually the first thing they start talking about.
Yeah.
And it goes on from there.
Yeah, where's that Rolls Royce? Why didn't you pull up in it? So, Normand, welcome to the show. And why don't you let us know exactly what Groupe Park Avenue is today?
Sure, and thank you for having me on. A lot of excited employees today. Hopefully we'll be listening, although we're competing with the Canadians, but I think we'll win out.
Absolutely.
Listen, Groupe Park Avenue today is still a family business, the Hébert family. It's 16 automobile dealers in Montreal and one in Vancouver. We have sales of over $400 million. We sell about 11,500 new and used vehicles a year, over 500 employees, a nice sized business with a great team, and we're very proud of it.
Now, so how did the Hébert family get into this business? Where did it all start?
Well, my dad's what you call a self-made man, started in the early 1950s in the auto parts business. His dream was to be an automobile dealer, and the best dealership in those days was a Chevrolet dealership. So he tried very hard for a number of years and was able to buy a dealership located on Park Avenue, Avenue du Parc, but in those days it was Park Avenue. That's where the name Groupe Park Avenue, and Park Avenue Chevrolet was the store, which he bought in '59. It was a dealership that was nearly bankrupt, if you can believe that, because the business was so strong for GM. And he turned it around, and it became, through the 60s and 70s, one of the largest GM dealers at that time, selling Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, and Cadillacs in Canada.
Now, how does one choose which type of car to sell? I mean, there's so many different varieties out there. Is this something that the entrepreneur goes out and says, I want to sell that? Or is it the dealers that come in and say, well, we want to be in this market?
Well, when we were able to diversify back in '84, up until that time, you were only allowed to own one General Motors store. We saw the tendencies coming in the market, the imports, the Japanese and European brands had started in the early 80s. And so we thought about it, and you have to have some strategy in the business. And we wanted to have the three leading Japanese brands, Nissan, Honda, and Toyota. So we went out and convinced, I guess, the manufacturers to give us a franchise. But they can't give franchises at every street corner, so we needed to find an area in the city where there was no representation. In the mid '80s, the market that we found that was available for those brands, but we also wanted to build an auto mall, which is a kind of an automobile shopping center. So we identified Brossard on the South Shore on Taschereau Boulevard, just west of the Champlain Bridge exit, and so we bought some property and we went and visited with the manufacturers. We talked to them about our plan, and lo and behold, they gave us the franchises.
You're in a business which is essentially sort of, I mean, some of your dealerships are competing with the others. How have you managed that over the years when essentially, some employees may be trying to take away business from other employees?
Well, the business model is really having as many brands as you can in one location, because customers, as you know, buy where they either live or they work. Each brand has a niche in the marketplace. Obviously, there's luxury and non-luxury, but within even the different luxury or non-luxury brands, there's everybody has their image. So yes, they're competing, but at the same time, we're able to offer a wide array of vehicles, many brands, to our customers who often buy or have bought more than one vehicle from us.
Maybe you can explain a little bit. You mentioned auto mall. Like maybe you can tell us exactly what that is and how the concept came to be. Is it something that you originated, or is this something across the nation that started before?
Well, auto malls really kind of took their start in California. Back in the 1960s, there was municipalities actually who collect a percentage of the sales tax, which is kind of unique. Had a real interest in having automobile dealers in their community. So they had lots of land, and they approached automobile dealers to build their dealerships in one central location. So the concept of one-stop shopping, not unlike shopping centers that we saw for many years and still today. That tendency came to Canada in the late 70s and early 80s, and that was kind of our vision, driven by my dad, but also by myself to do something that was unique. And today we operate 10 franchises on Taschereau Boulevard, but there are 10 others that we do not own. So it's the largest automobile shopping center in Quebec.
Do the manufacturers care that you have all the competition on one piece of property?
Well, what they like is they like traffic, and have many brands in one location will attract a lot of traffic, which is a good thing. I think your question also is going to, how do they feel about us operating different brands?
Correct.
And I think what we can bring to the table for them is an experienced management team, access to capital, good structure, good processes, and there's enough measurements in our business today that they can know, and we know, if we're performing well. So if we are, and this is what we always try to do, is to do as best as we can in all of our key performance indicators, then they're happy and we're happy.
Certainly seems like an air of transparency about the whole process. Is that true?
Well, that's certainly the way we've always tried to operate, and we're business people and entrepreneurs, and I think that there's an opportunity for us to have a number of brands and do well with them. I think it's a win-win for the manufacturer, for ourselves, and especially for the customer who has who knows who they're dealing with, and have a wide choice of products.
Concept of transparency is huge amongst entrepreneurs, and there's a big debate either what information you reveal or not. And we come back from the break, I'm curious to hear from Normand exactly how that management style has kind of worked in their business over the years.
Today's Entrepreneur continues in a moment with our guest Normand Hebert Jr. from the Groupe Park Avenue at 7:15.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur. Our guest this evening, Normand Hebert Jr. from the Groupe Park Avenue. And the auto marketplace, very competitive, Normand. What do you two do to maintain an edge, and what is your management style like? Do you expect a lot from your employees? Do you put a lot of pressure on them to perform?
Well, with many locations, and we have general managers in each location, we really have a decentralized management style. So I couldn't do everything that I do, both in the business and outside from a philanthropic point of view, if I had to be hands-on all the time. So my first management style, I guess, is delegate and empower, and I think that's something that I learned from my dad over the years, and that works very well for us. They have guidelines as to where they shouldn't step out of bounds, but within that it's as if it's their own business. And
do they report back to you? Do you follow up with them?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we have got constant communication, whether it's by phone or email today. We have monthly management meetings. So there's a lot of we measure just about everything that you can measure. So there's a lot of accountability. But within that, they're free to do what they want to do, and once they have their budgets, they can they can do as they please, in the sense as that it becomes their own business.
You mentioned that something that your father started. Did your dad? What kind of management style did he have?
Well, even I remember as a young boy, even as with one General Motors store and a long-term leasing company, two businesses in those days, that's the way he operated. He empowered his people, and he was able to build a really strong team. And in fact, there's probably maybe a dozen automobile dealers in Montreal today that came out of Park Avenue over the years. So he was able to develop strong management teams. And one of, I think, his strengths was that he had confidence in his people. And obviously, he was, as we're very transparent. We don't like gray. We're black or white, so it's very clear. what we want to do and what we expect. But within that notion of empowerment is a real feature of Groupe Park Avenue.
So when you came into the business, is that something you learned, or was that kind of inbred when you along the way?
Well, certainly it rubs off on you, and over the years, I think you take from your boss, and in my case it was my dad. So you take the things that you feel apply to you, and that was one that I was comfortable with. And then over the years, as you get a little bit more confident, and you read, and you're exposed to other business leaders, and then you realize that that's a good path to follow.
And your employees take to it well? I mean, do they disappoint? Do they flourish? Is that you find it works really the only way to go?
Well, I think so. I'm a big fan of that, because I think that people are, you have to compensate them properly if you want to retain your people. But the real edge that you have today is to let people develop themselves and flourish as an individual and as a leader within their own organizations. And that doesn't need to be the head. It could be anybody can be a leader. And I think if you can create that kind of atmosphere, people like that.
Today's Entrepreneur continues. Our guest, Normand Hebert Jr. from the Groupe Park Avenue. It's 7:23 on CJAD.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:25 on CJAD. Our guest this evening on today's Entrepreneur, Normand Hebert Jr. from the Groupe Park Avenue.
As you grew up in the family business, Normand, certainly there was a learning curve, even though you grew up around the table, and I'm sure there were plenty of discussions, and you couldn't escape it at the Sunday evening dinner. But when you look back, is there a decision that was taken that maybe you learned from, or if you were to have it all to do all over again, that you would do differently?
Yeah, unfortunately, you learn by your mistakes, and I think one of the things my father always taught me was to let me make mistakes. He was smart enough to kind of make sure that it didn't cost too much. So, and what I remember is it was probably my second year, and I had an opportunity with my General Motors representative to buy a large quantity of vehicles, about 100 cars at the time, and I thought it would be a great thing. We'd kind of corner the market. So I took a quick decision. I didn't consult him, and thinking that he'd be proud of what I did. I guess I forgot two things. One is that I was buying probably one of the worst sellers in the market, and that although we were able to have most of the vehicles that existed in Montreal, there were no special incentives on the car. So we had the monopoly, but nobody wanted them. So. So it took us a little while to get out of that one, and I think the lesson that he told me, and again, it's easy you can get mad at somebody, but he didn't get mad. He just kind of said, sometimes two heads are better than one. Maybe if you'd sat down and we talked about it, maybe we'd have made the same decision and made the same mistake together, but maybe it would have been a different outcome.
Have you had that? I mean, that was as a result of delegation, right? He delegated a certain amount, or was this more of an initiative on your part?
Well, yeah, I was in charge of the sales operation, so I was in charge of ordering the cars, and yes, it was a result of delegation, and that happens. I have young general managers today that they're going to come to you, and it might not work their idea, but you got to bite your tongue and let them experience that for themselves. Otherwise, they won't learn.
But you find yourself really letting them go, and I mean, have they come back? Have they learned lessons the hard way? I mean, with your pocketbook.
Yeah, I mean, you try to you want to make sure that you limit there, and sometimes you say, well, if it goes wrong, how much will it cost? And then sometimes they'll back away, but you have to let people learn, and that's what we try to teach our young managers is let make decisions, let your people make decisions, and if you try to correct them all the time or tell them that what the answer is, that they won't learn.
How many employees are you today?
We're about 525.
So there's a real hierarchy of people, and that works. I mean, you weren't always 525. Did you have to take a long time to develop that kind of pyramid, if you will?
Well, as we grew, and it's a pretty flat organization. I mean, there's myself, then there's general managers, and then line managers. So and we have a very lean corporate office, a chief financial officer, an HR manager, and a customer relations manager. So it's pretty lean, and we grew it over the years. One of the strengths that we have and we've developed is that we grow our people internally. We really have a philosophy of promoting from within. So that's really a powerful tool to hire people and obviously to keep them. And that's allowed us to grow. We're just opening a new Nissan store next week in Saint-Constant on the South Shore, and all of our management team has come from within. So that's a really powerful statement.
Management styles among entrepreneurs are vastly different. And as we were talking here, Normand and Groupe Park Avenue, they're open, they're transparent, they delegate, versus maybe some other entrepreneurs that really keep all their items and information close to the vest. They feel they want to control. Both can be successful, certainly over the years you find, but if you don't let other people do their job and empower them to do it, I think the entrepreneur will be limited in their growth and in their success. And that's a tough lesson to learn, because you don't necessarily want to impart all the information. Hey, Normand, thank you very much. I know when we come back, there's so many more things to discuss from a marketing and transition standpoint. Looking forward to it.
And as well, when it comes to family businesses, was there ever any conflict? We'll get to that, and you'll impart some wisdom for our other family business owners out there listening on the program. It's 7:30 on CJAD.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:33. Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur. I'm Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Josh Miller. We're here every Monday night at 7 p.m. profiling fantastic local business owners. And this evening we have Normand Hébert Jr. on the program from Le Groupe Park Avenue. And now, Normand, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're at 16 dealerships right now, 16 car dealerships in the country.
That's right. We have 14 in Montreal, 2 in Vancouver, and a long-term leasing company, one of the largest in Quebec.
Your family started in 1959 with the one on Park Avenue, of course. How did you grow? I think it's a pretty basic question for a lot of business owners out there. A lot of people are maybe stuck at the same level for a long time. At what point did the business sort of explode?
And managing growth as well, because it's one thing to have great sales and another thing to control those costs along the way.
Well, I think there's 2 parts of it. Obviously, through the 60s and 70s and even the 80s, as we had the one General Motors dealer and our long-term leasing company, the growth was through that. And obviously my father grew that from probably a 200 or 300 car dealership to a 4,000 car dealership. So there was growth there, and then when we were able to diversify, then we grew it from one physical dealership to many, to where we are today. And probably one of the key things in any growth recipe is risk, and you have to be ready at some point. You have to know where you want to go, which is one thing. But anybody can have a strategy, but if you're not prepared to execute it, and part of execution is risk, and it's putting your money on the table and starting a new business or buying a piece of property, and that's challenging.
That's my next question. Did you have, when you decided to open up perhaps dealership number 2 or 3, did you have the volume where that decision was sort of a no-brainer, or did you sort of roll the dice and say, I'm going to open up another location and I'm going to assume the business is going to come?
Well, timing is so much in business, and this was 85, 86. The import business was actually booming in Montreal, and when we opened these stores, build it and they will come. Well, that's what happened. So but it wasn't always the case. We had some other stores that were had a really slow start. So it's not always easy, but you have to be in a market where, especially in the car business, you have to be in a market that has people have the means to buy a car, and that there's critical mass, and that's what we try to achieve in Brossard. And
then what happens when a recession hits?
Then hopefully you've accumulated capital over the years, and you kept that in the business. You readjust your operations as you can. Sometimes you have to cut not only the fat, the bone. You try not to do that, but survival is the essential. We've gone through probably 3 or 4 recessions in all of our years, and
have you learned from each one?
Yeah, I think you never. The one thing that's the hardest is to realize when are you in it. That's hard.
Yeah, you're especially as you're growing and you're creating these processes to try and manage the existing business, and then kind of a brick wall, or at least a half brick wall, come, and you got to restart. You got to go back to scratch, and you got to figure out where you got to cut or where you got to develop after that.
And the leader, it all starts with the leader, and at some point you have to say, that we're in the storm. And my dad had an expression that when the seas are calm, let your crew pilot the boat. But when the seas act up and you're in the storm, the captain needs to take over the helm. And I think that's when you have to call the shots and say, listen, we're in the storm and we have to make some decisions.
Leadership is certainly key. Now that you have 500 plus employees, is it easy to keep them all in the same direction, and how do you accomplish that?
I think communication, and you can never over communicate. I think from the top management team right to the bottom, we try to give as much information as we can. There's very little that we don't communicate, and I think that once people know knowledge is power, then they're able to to follow where we want to go. And I think it's as simple as saying, this is where we want to go, and so many people just don't say that
and don't communicate it necessarily.
That's right.
Let's I'm going to say switch gears a little bit. No pun intended. Marketing. You have these dealerships. You're going up against other people. I mean, it's a similar product because other people have similar dealerships. How do you deal with marketing? What's been some of your more effective means?
Well, we all sell the same vehicles at the same price, at the same interest rate. So that's a given. And there's very little margin in automobiles today, so there's very little elasticity left in the price of vehicles. That's a fancy way of saying there's not a whole lot of room to negotiate anymore. So I think the key today in our business is customer retention and keeping your customers, and that's what we focus a lot of our marketing on. We have a loyalty card program, which is in its second year, which is doing very well, and we hope over the years will become stronger and stronger. And the fact that we have many dealerships allows us to cross-market to our different customers, and as people's needs change, then hopefully we have the vehicle for them. So that's really where we focus.
So not so much those wacky cartoon characters with the inflatable arms?
No.
But when you're driving on Tasho, for example, and you see all of these dealerships, and a lot of businesses are like that. They have sort of competitors nearby. How do you stand out from the crowd, and how do you get people to drive into your place as opposed to the neighbor?
Well, a couple of things. One is they all have the same name, so it's Park Avenue, and we've decided to. We did that just before our 50th anniversary in 2009, excuse me, and to rebrand the stores that didn't have the name Park Avenue. So that allows people to understand right away that this store versus the other store is part of the Park Avenue group. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is our stores are all at the latest manufacturer image. So you see stores that look the same brand. Well, we're there, and that's a source of pride for us, and I think for our customers it's a source of comfort that our stores are modern, they're clean, they're state of the art, and I think that's when you look at others perhaps in the same geographic area, it certainly raises the bar for our competitors.
Having so many brands under the same umbrella, are you trying to be all things to all people?
No, I think that consumers have so many options today that we're trying to give them a good choice from an entry-level vehicle to a luxury vehicle, and I think to do that you need to have a certain number of brands. Do we need to have them all? The answer is no. Do we want to have them all? The answer is no, and probably we couldn't have them all. But I think that the kind of choice that we have is, I think we're in the right space.
Today's more youthful consumer, are you hitting the social media, the Facebook, the Twitters? Can you use those to sell cars?
I think so. We're experimenting like so many other people are. It's kind of the thing, you don't really know how it's all going to turn out, but you got to be there. One of the things that we're seeing, because we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, and we're on Twitter, is Twitter right now seems to be much more transactional. We have a young woman that works for us and is kind of our social media person, and she's on Twitter, and she's constantly there, as you should be, and we're finding that people are following her and are asking her for advice or for information, which is more than we see on Facebook. And I think there's for two different reasons, and so Twitter's kind of an interesting development.
How has the internet in general changed your business? So many people now are buying cars from Kijiji and Craigslist. Do you find yourself competing with those online classified sites?
Well, we're there. I mean, the used car business today is 100% internet based, and unfortunately for print, that's just a thing of the past. So yes, we're on as many websites as we can. What you need is you need to have eyeballs looking at your vehicles. On the new car side of the business, it has been a fantastic tool for consumers to educate them, to allow them comparison shopping, to find out what the car will cost on a monthly basis. You can even get your credit approved online. But it's not transactional. People are coming in and they want to try the car and they want to meet the salesperson from whom they'll buy the vehicle.
In a few minutes, we're going to come back and talk a little bit about, succession planning and estate planning and all that. Maybe, Norma, you can give us a little bit of history, of detail, what worked for you when you're talking about transition, when your dad kind of wound down and you kind of built up into that role of CEO.
Well, certainly as every time that he gave more responsibilities to me, one of the things that he did is he really passed the baton. He backed away, and when in the early 90s he asked me to take over as CEO of the group, his decision was made. He felt that I could do it. I felt as well, and that I could. And as soon as he did that, he gave me full responsibility. And one of the things that he did was he found himself another job, and he became philanthropic, and he got involved in a number of different activities. It kept him busy. He always had his hands close to the business because he still had financial interest in it. But from a day-to-day basis, he had moved on.
Do you still involve him at all?
Oh, absolutely. He's invaluable. He's 85 years old, and whenever I have some big issues, I just love to sit down with him. He doesn't have his nose in it anymore, so he's very impartial and objective. And I always look forward to those chats.
What about the next generation? Any plans?
Yes, we have two children, a daughter 26 and a son who's 24. They're both very interested in the business. Our daughter's just finished an MBA at Harvard, so we're very proud of her. She's living in London, England, and working, and she wants to stay there for a few more years. She's getting married next year, but is interested in the business. And our son is also working outside the business now and wants to do an MBA and then join us probably in late 2013. So both kids are interested. They're motivated. They know a lot about the business because we've communicated that to them, and we're excited.
You make transition sound easy. It's certainly not easy for many, many families. So you must be doing something right. And I think one of the areas and issues that entrepreneurs don't always realize is that communication is key. Positive communication, constant communication. You have that with all generations, whether it's parents or children or siblings. And, well, some of it may be yelling along the way. But a lot of it is at least it's out there and at least it's knowledge, and that's huge, and I think you've done that really well. And I think when we get back from the break, we're going to chat a little bit more about a little bit of the technical side, and also with Norman, kind of hear how he's done it as well.
And Nick Moredas, tax partner at Fuller Landau, will join us to walk us through some of those technical issues. So if you do have a family business and perhaps are going through those same sort of succession issues, you want to pass the business on to your young ones, Nick will have a lot of advice to give you on that. So that's coming up in a second on today's Entrepreneur. It's 7:45.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:48, welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Josh Miller, our guest this evening, Normand Abel Jr. from the Groupe Park Avenue, and we also bring into the conversation Nick Moredas, a tax partner at Fuller Landau. Welcome back, Nick.
Thank you.
And we want to get into to family businesses, as is the case with Normand, passing it on to the next generation, which is something, Normand, that you're looking forward to in the coming years, I'm assuming, and how to do that properly.
Now, there's so many ways. There's, minimize the taxes. Nobody wants to pay a lot of taxes. And there's some areas, and capital gains exemption is part of it. But maybe there are some things that don't work necessarily. Nick, maybe you can elaborate.
That's right. One of the policies within the Canadian government is something called the capital gains deduction, which is I guess, an incentive to business owners who build their business over time, and it's an exit. When they do sell, they can pocket more money in their pocket tax free. It is a very useful tool. It's core tool in any business environment that you work in terms of planning to make sure that you're into that. For some reason, and I'm sure there's probably good reasons, it doesn't work very well in the family succession. So despite government rhetoric that knows that there's an enormous wave of business succession coming and that there are children who are looking to take over, if, Normand, you could sell your business to me and you could be structured properly, you would pay far, far less tax than if you tried to sell your business to your own 2 children and continue on the succession.
That's correct.
And that is stated government policy, and it's not very fair. There's been some discussions at the political level, but I think there's lack of some meaningful reviewing as to perhaps changing that, which therefore means we got to do a whole bunch of other things.
Like what?
Well, one is selling it to me. I'll give you a good price, Normand. The other is that
You'll leave them with a car for life,
that's
right?
right. But then you start looking at the situation that if you are looking at one of the exits for the owner is I'm either going to do what? I'm either shutting down the business, or I'm going to sell it to my children, or I'm going to sell it to somebody else. Could be management or a third party. And you don't know what you're going to do, and you're basically looking at some structure, and you're getting into looking at that corporation that runs your business and start complicating who the shareholders are of that business. And you're getting into the use of family trusts, where you're bringing in the family as beneficiaries. You start looking at various holding companies within the family, where eventually you're accumulating your cash, and that will probably be used at one point in time to do the succession. You start looking at life insurance a lot more carefully, because it is a useful tool for the children to pay into the parents' estate. You're looking at the founder also turning around and making that conscious decision. Well, if I want to do something today and sell out to somebody else, I'll have X dollars in my pocket. I won't be working anymore. Whereas if I want that, pass it on to my children, there is some expectation that final cash dollar will be delayed until much further. And then
does the entrepreneur lose control when this process is done? If he passes on to his ultimate family.
You could. It is not normally is something that you look to do. The entrepreneur is looking to maintain that control, whether it's through votes, whether through signing authorities, whether it's the final ultimate decision, whether it's being the CEO and chairman of the board. Introducing somebody as a shareholder does not necessarily mean that shareholder has rights to outdo what you want to do and decide to do something else. It just gives them the right to potentially participate in the future growth and wealth of the company. So there is a balance to be struck.
So the entrepreneur, if he or she is thinking about flexibility when they're looking to structure, or if you're talking about family trust, then there is some flexibility.
There is absolute flexibility. The structures are usually set up where Normand would be, say, in the driver's seat vis-a-vis the company and vis-a-vis the shareholders. But the question, what you're trying to do is you're looking to really spread the wealth. You're looking to really minimize your tax, increase what you can for your family. That's what you're in the business for. Aside from enjoying the business and et cetera, you are looking to increase your wealth. And aside that, yes, we will be paying taxes as we are living in Canada. There is you're looking as an objective to at least keep a fair share of your wealth amongst your family members.
Normand, when you went through this process, did you understand everything? Did it take a while to kind of grasp the concepts?
It's quite technical, so you need to have good professional advice. But at the end of the day, as you just mentioned, one of the beauties of a family business is that you're able to keep the wealth within the family, and part of that is the family trust method, and where you probably do a freeze of the value of your shares at one point, and then everything else goes to your children. So
today's Entrepreneur continues in a moment on CJAD. It's 7:53.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Remaining moments of today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau. Our guest this evening, Nomal Habal Jr. from the Groupe Park Avenue, and also Nick Moredas, tax partner at Fuller Landau, joined us to talk about how to pass on a business to the next generation.
So what have you seen mostly? Like what works, Nick, as far as this whole planning mechanism?
I think one of the keys is time. It's not something you decide several years before passing the torch to the children, or if the exit is to sell. It's not something you start a couple of years before. You need time to set it up. You need time in running as a parallel course, working with the children, like your dad did with you, and like you're going to now be starting with your own, on passing that knowledge, passing that the confidence, passing that delegation, etc. You need time to allow the value to shift around within the family members through the trusts, and that is something core and key. And usually, when guys like me start talking about it to people, you're not thinking about leaving. You're in the middle of working. You're usually in your late 30s, your 40s. Things are still going good. You're still doing your 12, 14 hours, and you relish that. And it's more fun. And I'm coming along. Oh, I want you to start thinking about the day you're not there anymore, and you're passing it on. And I get that crazy look that, Norman, in the sense you're giving me right now, is I'm not ready for that yet, but it's time that we need to make this work properly.
And there's certain planning that doesn't work if you're looking at just around the corner to
That's
either
right.
sell or pass on.
Yeah, the best laid plans of mice and men, if you are looking to transfer to your children and at the last minute decide that, no, that's not going to work, I want to sell to somebody, and you come running to your accountant and say, okay, get me my capital gains deduction, we might look at you and say, sorry, we didn't plan for that. And it's not something the government's going to give you away. You have to follow the rules. So that is something. It's time, and sitting down, talking to your advisors, and laying out the plan. And it might be, you decide today we're not going to do anything for 5 years, but at least you know why you're not doing anything for the next 5 years.
Making sure the door's open, making sure self-awareness is huge.
That's right.
Thanks very much, Nick. Narma, with your whole story, the family history, all you've been through, the transition, and everything else, is there a piece of advice, some words of wisdom that you would offer to today's entrepreneur?
Well, I think in a family business, the beauty of a family business is to be able to when it works, to be able to work with your family, enjoy the benefits of a successful business, and allow those in the family that maybe not want to be in the business to do other things as well, using that capital. So it's one of the great privileges to be able to do that and do it with your family. And to do that successfully, I think the advice is you need to communicate, you need to keep the family together and have fun, and I think it can work. It seems to be working for us.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Normand. Nick, Dan, the takeaway today for me is entrepreneurs that open up, that are transparent, that know that they can delegate, that don't always hold everything so closely to the vest. We see so many entrepreneurs that just don't want to share information that I find are very limited. There's a certain glass ceiling. But those that are willing to delegate, those that are willing to have other people grow with them, grow beneath them, grow beyond them, that's where the success really, really comes out. So entrepreneurs with that transparency, fantastic, and kudos to you, Normand, and your business.
Especially with your own family, too, and being patient with your own family as your father was with you, and didn't chew your ear off after that big purchase.
Just like all our fathers are with us, right?
Absolutely. Normand, thanks very much, and thank you, Nick, as well.
Nick.
Don't forget, you can reach Fuller Landau during business hours at 514-875-2865, or visit their website, www.flmontreal.com. Josh, what's up next week?
Next week, we have Robert Fagui, one of the partners of Prévost Fortin Daou, which is a law firm, and lawyers run a business too. So that should be very interesting.
Lawyers and accountants next week on today's Entrepreneur.
Non-stop thrills and chills.
Coming up to 8 p.m. on Montreal's News Talk Leader, CJAD 800.